Attention, fans of unfinished business television, we're thrilled to announce our proud partnership with Super 7, the ultimate destination for collectors and pop culture enthusiasts alike. Visit super74.com/AJEPYX today. Use promo code AJEPYX, and let's keep the good times rolling here at Unfinished Business Television.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another new episode of Unfinished Business Television. And we've got a special treat for you today. We have one of our first return guests to talk to us. He has a new film out on Tubi, An Unusual Suspect. Everybody, please welcome back Mr. Booker T. Mattison.
Insert applause. Thank you guys for having me. I have to say, the last time that I was on, I really enjoyed the level of research and depth of questions, because as you both know, when you do interviews over and over again, you get asked the same questions over and over and over again. So it's always nice when you get some different questions. So that's why I enjoyed, hanging out with you all the first time. I'm looking forward to chatting with you both again.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, again, always a pleasure, Booker, to have you on. And I happened to have the pleasure of seeing one of the early screenings of An Unusual Suspect last year. And, you already hinted kind of what the story was the last time you were on the show. So finally getting to see it fully completed, I was really blown away by it. I thought you had a very thought-provoking tale that tackles the justice system, tackles, sort of like never judging a book by its cover. You have a lot of themes in here that are pretty incredible. So I think for people that may not have seen the movie yet, tell us what exactly inspired the story for Unusual Suspect, and were there any particular cases in real life that you may have drawn from as you were writing the script?
It's a great question. So this film, it's a Tubi original film, and the production company is Mar Vista Entertainment, which no longer exists. They've been absorbed into Fox Entertainment Media. Nevertheless, this film and my previous film, which we talked about, Twisted Marriage Therapist, the last time I was on, both of those ideas, Mar Vista pitched me the basic premise. So, I didn't have a serial killer legal thriller in my arsenal. I am given to dark subject matter, but it never occurred to me to write about that. So they came to me, Mar Vista, with a kernel of an idea, and what ultimately wound up being the film. They gave me the creative freedom to do what was necessary to plug in the narrative and dramatic holes with the original idea, and then expand it to be what it eventually became. So it was fun. Probably the most challenging script that I had to write, and I'll admit also that I lobbied for the serial killer element to not be a part of it, because I didn't want to tell that story. I have a wife, I have daughters, you know what I mean? So, but I have to say that I'm also glad that they didn't yield, because I think that, you can responsibly address any issue cinematically. It's about whether or not you do it tastefully, and whether or not it's an informed position that you take, and also if the characters are multidimensional and layered, and I think that we accomplished that.
Well, I have a question then. What was, I guess, without the serial killer element, obviously spoiler alerts for people who haven't seen the film, what was it going to be more, I guess, the central story line without the serial killer?
Well, that's a I love your last name, so I call you Galashaw, but I just love. Look, if you're in my class, you know how we call you Galashaw. I didn't even know his name was Jeff. 15 years after the class, his name was Jeff. That's a Galashaw. So repeat the question again. Want to make
I guess basically like before, when you were, I guess, kind of fighting against the serial killer angle, what was going to be, I guess, the main plot storyline without that serial killer angle?
That's a great question, because when you're hit with something that viscerally disturbs you, I'm not convinced that your immediate reaction is one that's logical, reasonable, or even makes sense narratively. I just wasn't I was not comfortable telling a story where Black women were being targeted and killed. It just didn't sit well with me, and it's a great question, because okay, well, if that's what we're talking about, it begs the question. Well, okay, if that's not part of the story, then what do we have going on now? Granted, we had other things happening with the plot, but to your point, Galashaw, that would have been a huge narrative and dramatic hole that would not have been there. I liken it to when I did The Sound of Christmas, a BET Plus original film, which is my debut feature in 2022. There were two executives who wanted to remove the cancer storyline. The rationale was, it's a Christmas movie. You can't have negativity in a Christmas movie. I'm like, every Christmas movie has negativity in it. From contemplating suicide. I mean, come on, pick an issue, to the Nazis. You know what I'm saying? So I'm glad that that they didn't yield on that, though I was personally uncomfortable telling that. So I'm curious, again, not trying to give away spoilers, but for the two of you, I mean, and okay, and I'll say this: no one has said anything to me about that element of the story. So I guess it's not even really a question to even ask. Hey, how did you think that was treated? Well, and it's a story with Black characters, and if it's a story with Black characters and it's a legal thriller, then Black people are gonna die. I
Yeah.
I have to deal with that. That's me. The audience is fine. I have to deal with that.
So when I watched this film, two movies came to mind, and hopefully this is not going into spoiler territory here, but I was thinking of like Primal Fear with Richard Gere, and also Just Cause with Sean Connery and Lawrence Fishburne. That whole idea of, you have this suspect that seems very innocent, and we're supposed to get behind this person, and then we're not 100% sure if we should, as more things start to unfold and reveals themselves. Were those movies or any other films an inspiration when you were writing the script?
The interesting thing about that question is that the two comps that I was given was Primal Fear and The Usual Suspects. So that's what they wanted. They had that basic premise, which was, if I recall, see, because even saying certain things that are different would immediately expose, right? Because this genre wise, for your viewers, genre wise, this movie goes from a who done it to a why done it. So you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I mean, of course you can discuss anything, but I was about to say something that would have removed one of the layers that you discover. It's like an onion. Oh, there's a layer. Oh, that. Oh, I didn't know that. Um, I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that.
No, it makes sense.
Now, in writing, we were speaking about research earlier. Did you consult with any lawyers or law enforcement in the writing to like make sure certain things, didn't ring hollow or false in the script?
I did not consult with any lawyers or law enforcement, but there was the extensive research, both Google and also Chat GPT, with requiring citations to avoid misinformation and hallucinations. So, and then here's the other part too. When I was writing the story, I wrote the story first and then went back and injected. I knew that, okay, this was going to be a courtroom scene, but all the legalese that went into that, I wrote the story first, so I didn't have to be an expert in the law or even the crimes that the characters, were charged with. I just had to be an expert, or the character had to seem like they were an expert in X. So that's the way I went about it. And, research is a very important part of, as you both know, filmmakers. It's a huge part of what you do, and not just to make sure that your stories are authentic and accurate and believable, but also it gives you incredible ideas just doing basic research. And, I tell my screenwriting students that, basic research, it's fundamental. It's internal research, which is that research that comes from within yourself and your experience being a student of the human condition, and then external research via Google libraries, doing ride-alongs or consulting with experts, which is also things that I've done in the past, but that I didn't do with this particular film.
Talk about your casting process, particularly Christy Leverett playing Viola, because that's such a vital role, having to go from being a strong-arm attorney to then having to question what she's doing with this case and unfolding the truth. What was it that you found with her in the casting process that made you feel she was the strongest choice to carry this picture?
Christy actually read for Trisha and Makina, if I'm not mistaken. And the way that it works with Tubi is they ask me to give them my top 5. So the casting director sends me, the self-tapes. I decide, what I want the actors to read and that kind of a thing, and then the self-tapes come in. So I have to give Tubi my top 5 for the principal roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the case of Viola, our lead, I think, did we offer it to 2 people, 3 people? I think it was 2 or 3 people, and it was either a combination of scheduling, I forget what it was. We made a couple of offers that, for whatever reason, and I mean, I'm drawing a blank on the specific reasons, fell through. I think it was 3 different actors, if I'm not mistaken. And mind you, again, Christy did not read for Viola January. She read for Makina and Trisha. So even in the consideration of who we were looking at, it was within that 5 that I had, sent. And none of them came through. So then I'm like, yo, let's use Christy, right? Because the executive over this production, Brittany Clemens, who was with Mar Vistans, now with Fox, of course, because it's been absorbed. She had actually sent me a self-tape that Christy had done for a movie, I think it was Killer Beats, another Tubi original, before we even started casting for An Unusual Suspect. So how ironic, serendipitous, purposeful from God, pick a worldview, that she would wind up being the lead after, again, we offered it to several different, it was 5, because I gave them my top 5. And then I'm like, yo, let's use Christy. Boom. She was perfect for the role. She put her foot in it. She did her thing.
Okay. Now, my question is, okay, are like the Dutch angles that you use in the film, are they there to like play more with the audience's expectations and throw them off a little from any of the previous like standard camera work that's been shown before?
It is designed to feel unsettling. I don't want the audience thinking about these things. I want them to feel these things. So, the lines, not just the Dutch angles, but also the lines, and how we direct the eye, with perspective and vanishing points. All of those things are designed to make the audience feel unsettled. I wanted each frame, well, until we get to the end, of course, to make the audience feel unsettled. A combination of, angle, lines, lighting, color palette, performance, mise-en-scene, blocking, all of those things. But yes, those angles, sure. We don't even, well, you both know, but an audience member, they're like, I feel uncomfortable right now. It could be an empty room and it's a Dutch tilt. And they're like, I feel uncomfortable right now. They don't know why. Right. But they're like, this doesn't feel right, because we're used to we're used to things being in balance. And when they're not in balance, we're like, hey, wait a minute, this is unsettling. So absolutely, 100%, we used, the Dutch tilt to make the audience unsettled.
I'll ask you an unsettling question. Derek Case J. Smith, who played the ex-cop boyfriend to Christie's character.
Oh, no, he was a cop.
Um, was it tough to make him sympathetic? Because I mean, when we saw the screening and that scene when he's at the restaurant and he's trying to woo her like in that embarrassing way, I remember the audience really laughing their heads off with that. So was that like an idea you came up with, or was it something that was improvised on the set?
That's a great question, Dre, because that's a true story that happened with my wife and me. I was living in New York City. She was living in Virginia. And, on our, she came to New York and that was our first date. And we, me being sexy, being romantic, you know what I'm saying? Yo, we're going to walk to Jersey, you know what I'm saying? Because that sounds great. We can walk from New York. How do you do that? Right. So it's an actual story from my wife and me, our first date. But here's the other part. Now going back to, a narrative structure, I needed something in that moment to showcase the beauty of their relationship because they're not together when we come into the movie. So we're not rooting for something that we've never seen. He's actually he's creepy off the rip, right? So I had to show, why does she love this dude? What did they have, right? Because that's going to carry us through the rest of the narrative, but it's also going to throw us for a loop too, because wait a minute, what's his deal? You know what I'm saying? So I needed to humanize not only him, but also the relationship and show what was, because up until that point, we hadn't seen them get along or even have a civil conversation.
Since we're speaking of like casting in certain characters, the homeless older gentleman that we see throughout the film, is there something about his character that we're supposed to figure out or we're not being told? Is because
So, okay. So check it out.
without spoiling.
Right. So his name in the script, and in the credits is Strange Man. That's his name. Strange Man. And because he's a principal character, it's in all caps in the script for the first time we meet him. He had I think it was a scene. There was another scene, right? That because we just didn't have time. It was a 14-day shoot. It was insane.
I can imagine.
So it is a situation where, in this genre, we don't know who to believe or who to suspect. So as many things as the writer can throw at you to throw you off, the less likely you are to figure out the truth of the who and then the why. Right. So I don't want to call him a MacGuffin, or perhaps maybe I can't. Well, see, look at me. See what I'm about to give away about this is.
Yeah.
I think that was a spoiler. It's okay. Look, if somebody's listening this deep into the interview, they go watch the movie anyway. You understand? Even with the spoiler in that, we've been talking now for what? I don't know, 20 minutes, 15.
You have a little cameo in this movie in the barber shop. What's the backstory behind that? Because I had you in one of my early New York Film Academy movies. I think those days were pretty much finished. So what was going on that day? Did you run out of an extra?
You know what? So, okay. The first thing I'll say to that is that most people do not catch that. I'm talking family members, like they don't catch it. I've had family members, because quite a few of my family, they've been really supportive and sharing and posting, and even in family chats trying to say, okay, well, who were the 4 family members who were in there, and no one, right? So the way that it transpired, because I am not a fan of the director being in the movie. To me, it seems supremely egotistical and self-important and self-reverential, whatever. But the way that this went down, so the producer, Roberta Asetsu, was it, and who else was there? Was it the AD? nevertheless, we were talking about the scene, and I think it was Roberta who jokingly said that I should do it, and immediately I'm, no, far be it from me, right? Righteous indignation. But then I thought about it. One is it's an economic decision. We don't got to pay another extra. Two, it's so quick. So that's how that came about. My initial reaction was, nah, I'm not doing that. But then I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? Maybe that could be cool because it's so quick. It's not like it's some close up. It's in profile from a distance. It's a long shot. So it's not, oh yeah, let's be all about, Booker T in this moment, because it's not about me in that moment. It's about the characters and it's about the scene. And the main reason why I don't like being in something of my own is because as soon as someone recognizes you as a distraction, they come out of the story, that willing suspension of disbelief. Oh, hey, there's Booker. But it happened so quick. And the fact that you caught it, yo, kudos to you. Family members ain't catch it, right? So here you caught it. That's that astute eye, that Emerson College trained eye.
Well, I was still into the movie. I mean, it was just like, oh, that's cool. It's bigger.
Was there ever any pressure to make it the film any more like kind of exploitive or erotic?
Thankfully not. And here's the other thing. My last film with them, I called it a psychological thriller, but it could rightly be called an erotic thriller. It was very sexy, very sexy. But that's what they wanted, so that's what I gave them.
Okay.
Right. So no, never, never, that was probably the sexiest sex-filled movie that I've done, Twisted Marriage Therapist. But for me, sex is not something that, love and relationships are going to be a part of every film that I do. But sex is not something that, and I'm not saying that I'm anti-sex because I made a whole movie, an erotic thriller. But I'm thinking that perhaps, well, it never really came up because if you think about it, the only way that could reasonably happen is if Viola and Will exes had, how exes can fall back into a situation. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that early on in the development process, I did have that in there. And it didn't make the cut. And I'm glad that it didn't because, and even like Tubi, there's this whole Tubi universe, and a lot of those movies are very sexual. But the movie's been doing very well on Tubi, and no one ever says, "Oh man, I loved it," but there was no sex in it because the story is so taut and plotted, so carefully plotted that if you think about sex, it's like you a freak. You need to watch something else. Thankfully, no. To answer your question, thankfully, no.
Okay.
Another thing that stood out to me that I have to ask about, the pink gun that Viola has. What was the backstory behind that?
Well, a pink lady is an actual thing. I'm actually, I'm a gun owner. I go to the range, I shoot, teach my kids how to shoot. My wife shoots, so we all, shoot. And the pink lady is an actual thing, and it's a 38 special revolver, and it's pink to appeal to women. So you could go to any gun shop in your neighborhood right now, and I guarantee they probably have a pink lady in there because they're very popular with women because they're small. Of course, that revolver and the size of it has more recoil than if you have like a 9mm, bigger, but whatever, because you buy based upon sight. So I just thought it was cute. I thought it was interesting, and I'm inspired by the Coen brothers, as far as my style. So there's always going to be like quirkiness, strange details, comedy in places where you're not sure, should I be laughing here or should I be amused here? So I am inspired by that. And even like Boris Fruman, one of my directing professors at NYU, there was this sense that nothing should ever be perfect or just right, and there should always be a measure of the unexpected. And I think that pink gun, and that gun has an arc. There's a gun arc, But I think the fact that this is a significant part of the story with its own arc. The fact that it's pink and you think about what a gun does, it's really ironic and funny.
Okay, I'm trying to ask this question without spoiling anything. But towards the end, there's a fight between characters. One character kind of disappears, and we think, oh, that's the last we'll see of them. And then they come back miraculously. And I'm just wondering, when you originally wrote it, was it kind of explained a little more than what we see on screen? And
Actually, no. And okay, let me tell you how this went down. I'm trying to be,
in the guidelines.
I'm trying to think this through. So, okay, so what I had initially was what we see, where the character has a crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the character comes back, but what that moment was about was the woman saving herself. And we've been setting that up from the very beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Homeboy showing up, yo, just making sure, keeping you safe. It's like, yo, your job is not to keep me safe, dog. And if you think about it, most men, you have this impulse to protect and to cover. And you look, we humans, we pervert everything, don't we? And you can overreach, and it's like, bro, if your girlfriend, and certainly your ex-girlfriend didn't ask you to protect her, be following her around, dog, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that moment was about she saved herself. And the other payoff was he's like trying to clown that weapon at the beginning too, if you recall, right? And it's like when she had his, it didn't work. Now did it?
Nope.
So okay, but getting back specifically to your question, okay, there's a crisis, the character comes back. I wrote it that way, then took it out of the script with the character coming back. Right? He would have come back at the very end at the denouement, the resolution. Took it out. Brittany was so impassioned about putting that back in there, him showing up after the crisis, right?
Okay.
Not at the end. That they spent, because we were completely budgeted out. We didn't have any extra money because actors have to fly out and all this stuff. They actually paid extra money, which never happens on these budgets, to have him come back. I'm so glad they did. But the irony is, it was on the page. I took it out, and then Brittany was like, yo, while we were shooting, that has to go back in there. And I'm glad it went back in there.
So in doing research for this interview, I read that you had some of your students on set to shadow you, even some that helped with some of your marketing materials, which was pretty surprising. So how important was it for you to give them a positive learning experience while still having to be under the gun with the budget and the schedule, given that had only 2 weeks to shoot this thing?
Sure. So every film that I've made since I've been a professor, even going back to making shorts, actually, The Sound of Christmas, I didn't have students on that because it was during the semester, and it was my first feature, and it was like, you know what, I can't be dealing with that. But every other film, I always have students because it's one thing to teach them in a classroom, it's another thing for them to actually be on set and come alongside you and help you to make a film. And the way that it worked out with the PR aspect of it, David Clendenson, who's a professor of advertising and public relations, he came to me and said, hey, I have this group of students, we want to develop a marketing campaign, so it's a win-win. They get to work on a film because they typically work on local businesses in Athens, where UGA is located, and that's cool, it's fine, but they never worked on a film before. And for me, all this wonderful content, they created. So it was a nice win-win. And 3 former students, who had since graduated, they were hired for paid positions on the film, because we know how hard it is to get your first, break, to get your first, open door. So in any way that I can open doors for students, it's one thing to teach them. And again, that's what I'm hired to do, is to teach them and to mentor them. But when there's opportunities for me to create work for them, I certainly want to be a catalyst for that kind of vocational support.
Okay. Well, this is maybe seen as a stupid question, but
No such thing. No such thing.
okay, the production design on the film, like the symbols, like the dominoes, the auto shop sign. I don't know why, but I was taken by them watching the film, and I was wondering, was that like an important aspect, like when you were writing it, also, or was it just like, okay, I'll write like, okay, the symbol has two dominoes, and then let the production designer go crazy with what that symbol is?
Well, no, it was all carefully plotted because everything is a step in a reveal because every scene should advance the plot and reveal character. So the dominoes in particular, the logo, the production designer and myself, we went back and forth. She had her name is Tanya. She actually went to the University of Georgia also. Um, we went back and forth with several designs because it's like, nah, that's not it, and it's like you know when it's not working, and then you don't know what you're looking for exactly until you see it, like that's it. So we went back and forth, because that had to be on the business card, it had to be, on the sign, it had to be on the hand sanitizer. So it had to work. This is something that shows up, the rule of threes, beginning, middle, end, set up, develop, payoff. So it had to be something that was engaging, and also, we communicate in visual shorthand with films. We don't have a lot of time to explain anything. It has to be something that we immediately register. Boom. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. I saw that before. Hey, wait a minute. Why am I seeing that here? Hey, wait a minute. That makes sense based upon X or whatever the case may be. So that was that wasn't a stupid question. That was a very astute question.
So Booker, as we wrap this up, last two questions I have for you. How's the reception for the film been in general? And do you have anything else coming up in the early stages?
Sure. So according to the network, and they don't release numbers like unless you make the Variety top 10 list. So the quote is, if I quote it correctly, that the movie is doing very well and holding strong. This from the network, and also again, this Tubi universe is this whole universe of Tubi viewers. And Tubi is now like has more viewing hours than like Prime, um, Apple, Max. It's only like a couple of them that have more viewing hours than Tubi, which is insane. And you in these Facebook groups, this whole world they recommend and talk about and share films, and it's crazy seeing the movie pop up in these, and I'm in there and I'm like, when somebody will post the movie, I'm like, thanks for watching, glad you enjoyed, and post the trailer. It's been insane. It's a very breathy way of saying one, the immediate feedback, which is unique to what we're able to do now in the era of streaming, and specifically this fandom, this Tubi fandom. You get instant feedback of people saying, "Oh, great movie," and that kind of a thing. So it's been really, really nice to get that instant feedback, and I'm just submitted a synopsis and a log line for a Christmas movie idea that I want to do theatrically. And last Friday, I submitted a treatment for a rom-com, made for TV movie. So I'd love to go from Christmas movie to psychological thriller to legal thriller to rom-com, then Christmas movie. Look, I support. How about that? So the ideas have been sold, have been pitched. So those are what I hope will be my next two projects, in addition to a procedural that I'll be pitching called Fog City. That's that's what I'm working on today, actually, because I got my other two deadlines in.
Okay. Now I know you probably get this all the time. Does anybody mention that like you have the same name as a popular wrestler from WCW from the 90s and early 2000s?
Yes, and here's the thing. Depending on the age of the people, it's the person that they reference. So a certain age, I guess, is that, I don't know, Gen Z, I guess, is Booker T the wrestler. Then boomers, it's Booker T Washington. You know what I mean? Or boomers also may say Booker T and the MGs. So when it's Booker T the wrestler, it's the younger, right? When it's Booker T and the MGs or Booker T Washington, older, but here's the etymology of my name. So I was named after my father's best friend, who was killed in a car wreck a couple of months before I was born. So I wasn't named after Booker T. Washington. But I'm sure that Booker T. BT was my dad's friend. I'm sure BT was likely. Come on, a black man born in 40s in the South. Who you think he was named after?
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add about the film? Obviously, you can find it on Tubi now. It's streaming. I don't have really anything else to ask. I'm just, again, happy to have you on and proud of the work that you've done and seeing you grow as always. And I just look forward to the next Booker Mattison production.
Well, Eric, yeah, I appreciate you both having me on. Again, I always appreciate the level of research and questions that aren't just And again, look, I appreciate questions even when it's a question I've answered 6,000 times. But it's nice to answer different things. So yeah, I just want to thank you both for having me on again, and congrats to you, Dre. You knocking it out of the park. You know what I'm saying? Chip Mill, travel all over the country, winning awards.
Well, yeah.
Posting pictures with trophies. You know, trophy pick. I'm trying to get these trophies, right?
To get there, trust me.
But thanks to you both. And again, for those of you who are watching, check it out on Tubi. Tubi is free, does not require a subscription. For lack of a better term, people call it like a free Netflix. So check out An Unusual Suspect on Tubi. And while you're at it, you may as well check out Twisted Marriage Therapist. It's a wild, crazy movie too. And then, hey, you can check out The Sound of Christmas on BET Plus and Amazon Prime.
Yeah, they should do a whole retrospective on Tubi for both of those movies. They have a little marathon.
Like from back in the day.
All right, Booker. So yeah, appreciate it again. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.
Your Honor, the prosecution has yet to produce a single nanodrop of DNA linking my client to the victim or the crime scene.
He could not have committed the crime that he was charged with.
You're free.
This moment is way too big for us not to celebrate. So one of the smartest lawyers that I know.
You got your win. Now leave it alone.
The killer is still out there. If I'm right, more Black women are going to end up missing or dead, including me.
Go to the police.
Detective Gatlin.
I need your help filing a police report.
How does it look with my ex-girl showing up to the police station? The moment it goes on file, it's going to be marked resolved.
Because nobody does anything until a woman's dead. Police found the body of a Black woman cuffed with police-issued handcuffs. A white van was seen leaving the area. I'm receiving strange calls at work.
Keep digging, and you'll end up in the hole.
Who is this? I just found a tracking device on my car. It could be the van that's been following me.
You just need to stay with me, at least until we get this killer off the street.
I don't know if I trust anyone anymore. This man is gonna try to snatch me.
Never draw your weapon unless you're prepared to shoot.
How'd you know I drew my weapon?
If you like this review, please be sure to like and hit subscribe to be alerted to new episodes in the future.